Hello and welcome to today's episode of The Lounge. I have a dear friend of mine, Sierra Lund of Sierra Bravo Aviation. We met through a YoPro event with National Business Aviation Association last year, and we really connected on so many things, including public speaking, starting a business, and aliens. So we are going to dive in today into some really fun topics for you, including how to start a business and why business aviation is a great tool. And you can consider maybe calling Sierra if you need to buy an aircraft. Sierra, thanks for being here with me today.
Right. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
Yeah,
Long time.
I know. When did we first talk about this? It was,
I think May.
in March or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
April
time really
to March.
flies. The clock's already going to change this weekend. I can't believe it.
I know. I'm not ready for it, but here we are.
I'm not ready for it either. I like my sunlight. I don't want there to be more darkness, but that's okay. That is okay. As your favorite quote, life is happening for you, not for you.
That's right. That's right. I wish there was more light too, but maybe it's a good thing for us.
Yeah, you know what? This is the time of year also, the transition of seasons. It's, the slowing down. And, for those of us who are really driven, we really like to do a lot of things, we're very curious. It can be hard to do that sometimes. But when it gets colder, when there's less light, have that transition into a slower period rather than constantly being on the go all the time.
Totally. It's like a forced rest, which I'm not good at, but maybe we'll get there.
Not good at yet.
Not good at yet. We're working on it. Definitely.
Good. Yeah. Yeah, that was my story too. So tell me a little bit more about that. Obviously you've started a business and it's hard to rest when it's your thing, right? It's your baby. And there's so many pieces, so many things you have to do. And depending on the structure and like what you're actually doing, so many moving parts. What prompted you to start a business and how have you found your relationship to taking rest and, really nourishing yourself to be in that process?
Totally. This is a really great question for me right now because I'm in the process of figuring that out, to be completely honest. But what prompted me to start a business? I think I've always been drawn to starting my own business and really building things. That's what I like to do. I find that I'm not very fulfilled or happy when I don't have a goal that's unusually large to shoot for. So maybe that's just a factor of getting bored maybe a little bit too easy. So I have to constantly have my mind going and constantly be working towards something that's maybe a bit better, or working towards at least making myself better. And I found that that's a really fulfilling thing to do in my career as well. But I was actually on track to be a pilot. I started my flight training at 16 in high school. I totally thought I was going to be a Delta pilot in Atlanta. So I'm a Delta brat myself. And that was definitely the trajectory that I wanted to go. I ended up having an engine failure on takeoff on my first solo cross country. So I had about 20 hours. I was about 300 or 400 feet and my engine fully quit, swallowed a valve. Ended up landing on a golf course. Actually, the same year that Harrison Ford landed on a golf course. So the best thing about that was I got to meet him and talk about our experiences. But the other really great thing was I got to share aviation with people and really talk about my experience on a wide variety of platforms, from Good Morning America to Oshkosh. And it really sparked a passion of sharing aviation with people. And I knew that I wasn't going to get that in the cockpit. Although I love flying, I still do it for fun. All of my friends that I grew up with are all pilots. My family's all pilots. But I knew that it wasn't the route for me as far as a career goes. Just because I really liked sharing and connecting with people, and sharing aviation with people that aren't necessarily involved in aviation was really cool and exciting for me. So long story short, I fell into opening my own business with hopes of sharing aviation with with a wide variety of people.
Amazing. Yeah, no, it's really important to recognize that because the passion for something, whether it's aviation or something else, is not just one thing. It's not this silo of, well, if you're in aviation, you have to be a pilot, right? There's so many other roles that we need. There's so many other ways to be in that space and to thrive. And so by finding out quite early on that, yes, it was fun, it was something you loved, but not necessarily what you wanted to do as your career. And then having that still be a part of your life, right? You do it recreationally, but you decided that doesn't need to be the way that I earn money.
Yeah, totally. And there's a lot of pressure too
Yeah.
to go that route, especially with the financial um, up like my parents took on financially, just putting me through flight training and
Right.
also being surrounded by people that wanted to go to the airlines. And it's a great career. Being a pilot's an amazing career. And I went from a super stable, amazing, well-paid career to maybe branching off into something that wasn't quite known, which
Mm-hmm.
I'm very comfortable with, just my nature, but the
Yeah.
people around you might not be as comfortable. So it was definitely many years of people thinking I was crazy, but here we are. So grateful for it.
Well, I'm pretty sure that there's a quote about, like it doesn't matter if they can't hear the music, you should dance anyway. And there will always be people who are going to look from the outside and go, what are you doing? Right. I mean, we'll look at other people and go, what are you doing? But they have this vision, they have this passion, and they're committed to figuring it out. And that's awesome. Just like we might look at someone in, like a typical corporate job and go, what? We don't want to
Totally.
we don't want to do that. But for a lot of people, that's exactly what they want to do. And, being
Yeah.
able to have that lifestyle that fits is the most important thing, right? There's no right or wrong. Some people are suited for running a business. Some people are very much not. Maybe they're suited for coming up with the ideas or doing the marketing or the comms, the PR, the financials,
Right.
but they are certainly not the COO or CEO. And so finding where exactly you fit is really important.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So how long ago did you start your business?
I started my business 2.5 years ago.
Okay.
Yes, 2.5 years ago. So April of 21.
April of 21. Well, congratulations. How are
Thank
you
you.
feeling now a couple of years in? That's always the kind of like a bit of a tipping point for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's definitely a transition phase at the moment, which is awesome. But feeling very good about the direction. And it's funny that we're having this conversation right now because uh, I really am in kind of a pivot point of my business in some ways, or in a lot of ways, I guess. I envisioned my business just being a brokerage, and I really
Mhm.
envisioned myself just being, the only broker for quite some time, if not forever. Never really anticipated bringing a lot of team members on, and you know, right time, right place. I've been connected with a few individuals that are too awesome to pass up, and we're too synergistic to not work together. So I ended up bringing two more team members on, and I really look at them, more so. I know it's not their business, but I really look at them more so as partners in what we're doing. And so branching off into the consulting space too, while still holding on to the reason why I started a business, which is
Mhm.
obviously selling airplanes, has been a very interesting and fun transition, and it's been huge learning experience for me. Just realizing that what you start out wanting to do and what you start out your dream being,
Mm.
um, there's so much bigger ahead once you just keep going with
Yeah.
um, keep going towards your goal, but being willing to be open to that, even though it's not exactly what you had in mind 2.5 years ago. Super important. Or I think there's a lot of opportunities that you could definitely pass up on.
Absolutely. Yeah, that you just made a great point because so often, whether it's starting your own business or starting a career, we get this idea in our head and we go for it. But sometimes our heads are so down in the going for it that we ignore clues and signals along the way that are other opportunities, or maybe even red flags of signals going like, hey, something's not aligned here. And then we can get in this like pushing and striving and trying mode, and it becomes really hard, but it's because we're not actually paying attention to the change, the growth, the expansion, evolution of what that might be. Then we can allow for team members to come in, or for even the type of work that you do to change, or something, a new pipeline to be added.
Totally. Yeah. And it's hard, especially when you're starting your own thing. And I'm sure you know this too. For a while, your head has to be down and you have to just be putting in the work. And it's definitely been a learning experience for me to sort of realize sooner when I do need to look up and maybe take a step back and reevaluate the direction. Just to avoid, like you said, making things so much harder for you until life kind of smacks you in the face and tells you it's time to move on. So I'm trying to look for those cues a little bit quicker.
That's great. Yeah. And, it is a learning process. It's always about, you're being open to the idea and the opportunity, the growth. You found something that's like, okay, this would be crazy to pass up. This doesn't make sense to not do it. Right. And that's a very good indicator. And then from there, you continue to learn and grow and iterate. You mentioned that you're focused on the sales of aircraft and through aircraft transactions, but you might also find in the next year or two, especially as you bring on other team members with skill sets, there might be a new offering. Or as aviation continues to transform, we have a lot of new pathways, like maybe who knows what other sectors you might also be involved in, just based on the nature of the transactions that you're doing.
Totally. Yeah. And that's exciting. I choose to look at it as exciting. It could be looked at as scary, but yeah, really exciting. And Anthony and Justin are the new team members, and they are just, I thank God every day that they agreed to work with me because they're so qualified and they have so much really unique experience that just super grateful that they saw that in me as well and wanted to come on the team. So
amazing.
Very excited about it.
Well, congratulations on the expansion of your team. I'm sure that will continue to be a great journey. That's always kind of like a big step, right? And for me, one of my realizations, one of my pivot points was realizing that I don't want to bring on a team because I'm no longer designing the business that I had at the start, right? When I very first started Pivot Point, I was not focused on solely being a speaker or an event host. My thing was more the leadership training and coaching. And at that point, it made sense to start looking at bringing on a team. But now everything's pivoted. And so very much in line with the brand, being open to change and being open to opportunities that come across, you learn and then you iterate, right? You're going to learn, oh, this works, this doesn't work. This feels good, this doesn't feel good. That responded well in the market, that didn't respond well. And you just continue to go, with all of the things that you're getting. And, it's opening yourself for the change is very much the nature of business aviation as well.
Totally. And that's why I love just like watching you from afar too, because it definitely gives me a little bit of confidence to make those changes. And, I just think you're a great example of it working out when you do trust yourself like that.
Thank you. And, sometimes it's still hard, even when it's working out, right? It's not always puppies and rainbows, as I like to say. There's that old adage of, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I'm sorry, but that's BS. It will.
Yeah.
Tired, covered in everything, and you're going to keep going because it's important to you. Or you're going to decide, this is no longer important to me, or these factors no longer make sense. That's okay. I'm going to pivot and focus my energy over here.
Totally. I feel like when you do what you love, you're like willing to suffer for it. And completely different than not working a day in your life. But I get the intent.
Did you know that's the root of the word passionate?
Really?
The root in
No,
Latin, it means to suffer. So if you have
that
passion,
makes
if you're
sense.
passionate about something, it means you are willing to suffer for that thing.
I had no idea. That
Yeah,
makes a lot of sense though.
yeah, absolutely. And so that's really, we were talking before we went live about, I just mentioned this at base actually last week in the panel about, do you have a career or purpose? The concept of not just return on investment, but return on energy. And if you're not getting a return on your energy, you're putting so much in, and you're not getting anything back, you're feeling drained rather than nourished or excited, or like, doesn't matter that you're drained, you're ready to go at it again the next day. That's a really good signal to determine if this is the right path or if you want to pivot a little bit in either direction. Because sometimes, I mean, we've all done those tasks, or we've had the meeting that's 30 minutes long, but it feels like it's 3 hours. And you feel more tired after than you did with the 30 minutes of something that was really focused, really, you had that dedicated time and you accomplished a few things. And so that's a really good indicator. We were talking about that a little bit. So was the return on energy, is that another reason why you looked at bringing on team members?
I don't really think that it was. I really just think it was too good of an opportunity and too synergistic to pass up. And I do know when our skills align, there's opportunities that have popped up where I'll have a 2 hour long meeting and it'll feel like 30 minutes because now, just myself, I might not have been qualified to take on that job, but with the
Right.
three of us, it's so synergistic. We have such different, unique qualities that we can bring in and experiences that we can bring in that I just there's opportunities that I feel like we really are the best team to do it, and that's always exciting to me. And so I find myself working a little bit later and not being as tired at the end of the day, and even when I am, just being so energized waking up knowing that we have two more meetings about it today, or that the meeting we did have is pushing things forward and I can get into planning the next phase. So uh, yeah, it's just very exciting. I don't think it
Great.
was I don't think I brought them on because I was drained, but I think after bringing them on, there's definitely been a new life
A
to,
surge in energy.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
That's awesome. And it's really important to also recognize like your personality. You're a very sociable person. And so, even the fact that you wanted to share about aviation with other people and you realize that that was something you really connected to, by having team members around you that also will feed your energy, right? And because it can be lonely as a solopreneur. And that's something that I realized too, is while I didn't want to build a team for Pivot Point, I'm part of a team with other events companies that I work with regularly, right? And so we find our synergistic flow, and we create those relationships. And I didn't realize that was missing until I started doing it. And so that's why it's also important to be open to those new opportunities and new scenarios, setups, because you might not even realize that that is something that it's like you don't realize you miss the sun until all of a sudden after 2 weeks of cloudy, rainy days, the sun's back, right? And now you're like, wow, I feel so energized and nourished. That's great. So it's kind of a similar thing in that vein.
Yeah. And that makes me think of when I saw you in person in Dallas. And I know it was like so crazy, the whole event, but that whole weekend, there was a few individuals that I invited, and even just having you guys there and being able to share that. I didn't have a team at that time. So it was really cool to invite a few people from our business aviation community to experience the event. And it felt like I was sharing it with the team, even though you guys aren't like internal team.
Right.
It was cool to be able to share that with someone. And I know there's a lot of people in our industry that may have really small teams or may not have a team at all, but are doing a lot of business. And I feel like we find each other and can kind of support each other in what we're doing, even if we are competitors or in the same place of work. There's room for everybody, and it is so valuable to build those relationships with people that are in that same space of having a smaller team or having a solo team.
Absolutely. And it also, because it gives you perspective and it allows you to, bounce ideas off of somebody. It allows you to understand what someone else sees that you might not see. And they might be able to, make a connection for you. And business aviation is also very much a relationship-based business. However, I would just argue being human is a relationship-based experience. Everything we do is how we relate to other people, ideas, places, things, beliefs, systems, structures. And so when you can build that for yourself, you're not just focusing on building your internal network if you work at a company or if you have a company, but having that external wider industry network, and then also maybe some that are outside to get different perspectives is really important.
Totally. Yeah. And business aviation is so good about that too, is because everybody is very welcoming, and I think it's the best industry. I might be biased, but I really do think it's such a cool community of people, and everyone, at least the people that I have found, really motivated and passionate about what we do and serving a bigger purpose than just, making money, which is awesome.
Absolutely. And while that still exists, there are still some people who have that mindset that exists everywhere. For the most part, it is a very tight-knit community, and even that mindset is slowly being phased out, right? We're seeing, less and less of that, and it's really beautiful to see. The ones who stay in that mindset typically don't stay around for very long, right? Their businesses pop up for a short while, and then they go away. But it is a great industry. Now, tell me a little bit more about your experience. Did you know about business aviation when you started flying at 16? Is your family involved in that realm also, or was that a new thing of aviation later?
So my family's very into general aviation.
Okay.
My father and I actually got our license 2 years apart in the same airplane. So
That's cool.
super fun. But he actually is an A&P IA mechanic, and I grew up working in his engine shop with him, doing annuals on airplanes, helping him pick apart engines, doing the logbooks. So he's very involved in general aviation. And like I said, Atlanta is like the hub for Delta Airlines and Southwest. So definitely surrounded by a lot of commercial aviation. And, when people time build, they'll pick up some smaller, business aviation or charter jobs, but it was never something. This was really me, in a way, branching off into something that's a little bit different than everyone I was surrounded by. But there is such a cool business aviation community in Atlanta, which is really great. But I actually wasn't connected. I was adjacent to it, but I wasn't connected to the business aviation side. And I do feel like I really found my place in aviation when I found business aviation.
Awesome. That's great to hear. That's really great to hear. Now, how do you describe business aviation being a tool for some of your customers as you, what type of aircraft are you focusing on in your brokerage, and how are you helping them utilize this as a tool?
So right now we're really focused on midsize and up. Obviously, it's not an investment, it's a depreciating asset, but you do get to buy back a lot of your time. And so that's my biggest thing. I think our slogan, if you will, is buy time, buy a jet. So you're obviously, if you're looking to make money off of your jet, which a lot of people are misunderstood and think that they can buy an aircraft and, see they're in the green by chartering it out a couple hundred hours or 150 hours. And, I do feel like with a lot of my new buyers, that is an educational point that I get to put in there. But if they are ready to make that investment and to buy their time back, there's no other way to buy your time back other than that. And so I think it's very cool in that regard. And then what I love, especially with working with first-time buyers, is this is a really big moment in their career. Some of these people, have been working to build their business for 15, 20 years. They're finally at a place, which is such a big deal, to spend a significant amount of money to buy an asset that they can use with their business and they could use traveling with their family. And so it really is such a cool process to be able to take people through, because I understand starting my own business 2 years ago, I can only imagine how much work and sacrifice they put in to get to a place where they can afford to buy a Phenom 300 or a Challenger. So that's very exciting for me. So I do like to focus on those first-time buyers. And because I'm such a new broker, I feel like that is a good place to find new clients, because a lot of people have their brokers, they stick with them.
Right.
So really targeting that first-time buyer and growing with them is something I'm super passionate about. And I definitely love the process.
Great. And that's wonderful. Yeah. Falling in love with the process is how you become okay with the pivots and the changes. And
Absolutely.
I like what you mentioned there about building. You're not trying to steal other people's clients. If they come to you, that's a different thing. But I want to take you on this journey from the beginning and then be with you as you continue to change aircraft, get, bigger ones, whatever your needs are. But that relationship and that long-term thinking.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Amazing. Now, when we look at some of the things we're talking about, business and life, and space and aliens, and I was like, okay, we're gonna have fun. This is totally what I'm doing. So why is fitness so important to you? Tell me a little bit more about your routine and how you found it help your daily life.
For sure. Fitness is like my whole life. I feel like outside of aviation, it's fitness. Used to do bodybuilding competitions, fell in love with it, then switched to CrossFit competitions, and now I'm in my Pilates phase of life. So
Cool.
big time solid core advocate. I feel like I joined the cult there.
Yep.
But one, I mean, it's such a cool community. I really do like surrounding myself with people that are goal oriented, whether it's surrounding myself with them in my professional life or my personal life. And, I've dealt with, especially the main reason I started my business and actually didn't go towards a job flying is because I actually developed a heart condition and lost my medical. And so still on the trajectory to be healthy and get that back. But fitness was such a huge part of my life, and I kind of got that ripped away along with the other huge part of my life, which is aviation. And so that was a very tough, I guess, year and a half where I really couldn't do anything. I couldn't even lift my purse up the stairs.
Wow.
So I have a new love and value for that now that I am getting it back. But I really got to dive deep into, nutrition, and not just like tracking your macros. And if anyone's a fitness person, they'll know what tracking their macros is. But, I used to just track my macros and get my protein in and get to the gym. And I was a huge meathead in that regard. And you look great, but it might not always be what's best for you internally. And so when I did get sick, it was a really, there's a bunch of negatives to it, but I'll go crazy if I look at the negatives. But the positives to it were, one, I got to start my business and found something in aviation that's not flying, but something I'm extremely passionate about. And I don't know if I'd be confident enough to take that leap if I wasn't forced into it. And the other factor, as far as health goes, is I really got to learn what's actually good for your body and your longevity. And just seeing those small changes, even when you change something in nutrition, to have more energy during your work calls, is just really cool to find what works for you and then implement that. I also think the discipline fitness teaches you is so easily translated to your success in your professional life and in your relationships. Because if you're not putting in the work and being disciplined when no one's watching and just for yourself, how are you going to do that for other people,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the discipline that comes with that, right? It's having that longer term goal, working towards something. And I find that really helps shift your mindset towards, being able to do that in other areas, because really the way you do one thing is the way you do all things, right? So if you're taking the time to follow a gym schedule, to eat a certain way, and you're really fine tuning all of those levers, that allows you to have that same skill set in other areas. And then it's more easy to apply because you're basically building a system rather than, a skill set. And I think that's what a lot of people overlook, and they don't see that relevance. And I mean, I wear Whoop, right? And became an affiliate for them because it's totally transformed, on the days that I don't exercise, if I'm like on a trip and it's really busy, my heart rate variability will go down, right? A lot of these metrics I can now see that, oh, you think it's not making much of a difference, but actually when you do them, it is really boosting a lot of things. Your sleep is better. The consistency is another thing, right? If you're training, you're going to be consistent in the schedule, and that's where you really see results. And that transfers over to having a business as well as to having, anything that you want to work towards in life.
Totally. I think it's a great way to build momentum too. Like, it's so easy because it's, if you do this, you're going to get this result. And it's not always like that in business, or it could be a much longer term thing where you don't see the results of your actions for 2-3 years, where in the gym, you might see it, in 2 or 3 months. And so it's a really good way to like build confidence in yourself and your actions, and then build that momentum, because when you're working towards goals that might take 3, 4, 5 years to come to fruition, it's nice to have something that you can see more in the short term, the results of your actions, that keeps you motivated to push forward.
Absolutely. That's a great point, because and even when you are working on some goals, you may not see results right away, right? Especially if you're bodybuilding or something, but you'll see that you're getting stronger, right? Like you can lift a heavier weight all of a sudden, or you can do more pull-ups, or, whatever the thing is. And that is a great feeling. And it's also this very like self-capable feeling of, oh, I can do hard things. And if you're doing the hard thing first thing in the morning, then like the rest of the day becomes super easy. When I used to compete in CrossFit, if I'd get some, person on the phone that was throwing a fit about something, whatever that thing was, I would literally just think to myself, I deadlifted 100 kilos today. Like, just,
you're like, I can do this.
I can do it. I can deal with this idiot, just, okay, breathe. And if you need to, you can lift him and throw him across the room. So, it's just like, it gives you this other mindset of, this is not really a big deal. We're going to get through this.
Absolutely. Yeah. And CrossFit's such a unique way to like push yourself so far past what you think that you're capable of mentally. Yeah. That was like my favorite thing about CrossFit, was it was always mentally so much harder than it was even physically.
Oh, yeah.
So it got you to trust yourself a lot more, I feel.
And that's a great thing too, because building the self-trust, like the best way to do it is to do the things you say you're going to do. You say you're going to go for a walk today, go for a walk today. Don't put it off till tomorrow, because actually every time you do that, every time you hit snooze, every time you don't do the thing you said you were going to do that day, you are eroding your self-trust, because you're not honoring the commitment you made to yourself. So that then starts to eat away at your ability to trust that you can do things, or that you will do things. And so then you might not take on certain projects because you're afraid you won't be able to do it. And it creeps in very slowly. So the best way to get on track with that is just to say, I'm going to go for a 5-minute walk, and go for a 5-minute walk. Or I'm going to meditate for 30 seconds, and you meditate for 30 seconds and you build up that muscle, right? It's not like you have to go out of the gate super hard. But yeah, that mental push is always the barrier. I remember I was preparing for a competition, and I had this one workout and had simulated a few times. And then when I did it with my teammate, I literally shaved 90 seconds off. And my coach was like, whoa, where'd that come from? And I was like, I guess I just needed somebody next to me to push me. Like, it's hard to push yourself when it's just yourself. But then by having that kind of marker there, it was like, oh, okay, I'm going to, like, I know I can keep up with her. So like, let me keep going. But yeah, the mental push is often the hardest. And one other thing I found when I did CrossFit is I would make these faces, and I still kind of do it with some lifts. But if you can try to make your face neutral and not grimace, or not like act like it's painful or hard, that also helps a lot with the mindset.
I would have loved to know that because I have some pictures from
Oh,
CrossFit competitions that
he's so
are
true. Yeah.
brutal.
Yeah, I
Brutal.
know. I'm glad that memes weren't as much of a thing when I was doing CrossFit competitions,
Yeah,
because there definitely would have been. My coach certainly made some, but there definitely would have been more. Uh,
that's
but
awesome.
yeah, I love that you talked about your journey with it. You know, you had college athletics, you had, CrossFit, you had bodybuilding. Now you're in the Pilates phase. And it's also important for people to understand, like, your being an athlete doesn't mean you do one thing, right? Being an
Right,
athlete means that you are active, and
right.
being open to trying new things when your body needs it, right? You had to recover from health issues. You needed to move in a different way, and that's okay. So finding that way to relate to the movement of what your body can do now, rather than always comparing it to, oh, what I could do 10 years ago or 5 years ago, or when, right? Remember when this, it's
Yeah,
allowing yourself to be where you're at and being open to, like, today's PR is maybe not going to beat yesterday's PR because of the factors of sleep or recovery time, that type of thing, right? We know from
yeah,
physically moving, we need to recover. We may not like it because we get addicted to that high, the rush of endorphins with exercising, but we know that in order to get stronger, we need to do that. And so the same thing for our businesses, the same thing for any project we're working on. Giving ourselves that rest allows everything to recover so we can do our best job.
yeah. That was something that was so hard to let go of too,
Hmm.
because in CrossFit it's so much about the PRs, and even in bodybuilding it's so much about the PRs and pushing yourself to the next level. And when all of that got taken away, it was really hard to
Mm,
learn how to say, okay, there's a phase of this that's new that I can still grow just in a different way. I'm not kind of hanging on to what I was capable of doing and probably won't again.
right.
But I do think that's helped so much, even in business. Of yesterday was yesterday, today is today, and we're gonna push forward because there are so many times starting a business where doors just get slammed in your face that you thought you were going to be able to walk right through.
Right.
And uh, I think the biggest thing that taught me was the quicker you can get over that and look ahead, you still take the lessons from those losses, but the quicker you can start focusing on what's right now instead of what was,
Yes.
um, definitely helps you move forward, helps you mentally.
What helped you with that process? Was there something specific that helped you get better at letting that go? Was it just deciding you didn't want to be frustrated anymore, or was there something specific that you started to do that really allowed you to help recognize, I don't need to try to go through this locked door, there's another door?
Honestly, health issues are so frustrating. And at a certain point, when there's no answers, you
Mm,
have to just be okay with where you're
mm,
at and look towards something else. And I truly think that starting my business really saved me from being, depressed, quite frankly, during that time because I was still focused on bettering myself. It was just in a totally different way.
yeah.
Um, and so I really dove into my business, I would say. And the second I was cleared to start moving again, um, starting to move just in a different way and focusing on new goals, whether that be having more energy to get through the day or, focusing on cutting out all the processed foods and, cutting out certain chemicals that are in the food. So that's been something that I've really dove into, and I could probably rant about chemicals and foods and everything for forever. So I won't get into that. But that has been something where it's almost just a maturing in it, and I had to figure out how to mature.
Yeah.
But it was really just sitting in the frustration until I couldn't anymore. There's not like one specific thing.
Yeah, that's so powerful too, to just recognize that. And I think there is a point where people just decide, am I going to continue to allow this external thing to frustrate me, or am I going to choose to just be okay with it?
Yeah, I
Because
feel
it
like
is a choice.
type A people do not like to not have control. And when you literally cannot get the control back, it's a good exercise for for people that maybe have a bit of control issues. So it was definitely a good exercise for me. A long one. Glad it's over, but yeah, focusing on what you can control, I think, is so important, and recognizing what you can't control and refusing to get upset by it.
Yes, absolutely. So what are some of the things that help you become okay with what's where you're at? Do you have a process? What are some of the things where when you face a difficulty or get frustrated by something, do you have a go-to method or something a tool that you utilize?
Honestly, going on a walk is so important, just like getting outside, not taking my headphones, because I will listen to a podcast if I have my headphones. So sometimes just like getting all of the voices out,
Mm,
going on a long walk with my dog helps a lot. And honestly, I I feel like I think so much about the time that I'm wasting that I've almost made being frustrated about something that I can't control in my brain an instant, okay, you're wasting this time, and this is time that you could be using just moving forward or moving towards a solution.
mhm.
So just getting a little bit more solutions based, and I'm just so um, almost have like a fear of the lack of time that I have. I don't know why I think of that, but on a macro scale and a micro scale, I'm constantly thinking about we don't have a lot of time here, or we don't have a lot of time left in the day, or we don't have a lot of time left in the year, and on a larger scale, we don't have a lot of time here on Earth, so taking advantage of that. I'm almost like scared of wasting too much time. So
Mm.
it's just an automatic thing. I'm like frustrated for a certain period, but I typically don't let myself be for for too long.
That's good. Yeah, that's really good. I think for me, my biggest go-to is just to breathe,
Yeah,
to really like slow down the breath and just give myself more space, allow
yeah,
myself to feel whatever's coming up. I think that's really important. A lot of type A people, a lot of people in aviation, especially, or aerospace, anything military, anything that's very kind of process and system oriented, are typically scared of the big F word, right? Feelings.
yeah,
And so just allowing yourself to feel them and be
yeah,
curious, like, oh, what's that? What is it? Can you even name it? Because so many times people cannot name the sensation. And then, so what do? We try to numb it, escape from it, ignore it, suppress it, um, control it in some way. And that doesn't work, which is why we have the repeating patterns that we have. And
yeah,
so just learning how to sit in that space, sit in that discomfort, which is what things like fitness can do for you, right? Like allowing yourself to be uncomfortable and knowing you're okay through it. That also is a very powerful method and tool for you to learn how to be okay with the emotional discomfort as well.
absolutely, absolutely. I feel like that's something I need to get better about. Is like being able to slow things down because I'm always pushing forward to the next thing.
Yeah,
That maybe I need to give myself a little bit more time to breathe. It's definitely something that I'm currently working on. So I'm not great at it yet, but we'll
it's
get
great.
there.
Yeah, and it's always a work in progress. One of the things I started to do, because I used to be a chronic overbooker. I'm very over optimistic with my time, but then I was chronically late to things. So I now will look at my calendar for the next week. And if I don't have at least 40% white space, I start canceling things. And they might be personal things, they might be
Yeah,
things that I said yes to without really thinking and being intentional about it. Or it might prompt me to look at um, all of the different areas I'm involved. What organizations am I working with? What's the volunteer time that I've got in there? And is it still in alignment? Is it still serving me, my personal values, my personal mission, the business mission, all of those things? And then that helps me be like that barometer kind of check
yeah,
of, oh, okay, this was a real great thing a year ago, but actually I'm no longer really.
I think I froze there. Sorry
That's
about
okay.
that.
No, that's all right. That's probably
No,
the
that's
aliens saying, "When are you going to talk about us? Or we're going to freeze
yeah.
your."
They're like, we're ready.
We've been here waiting. We know you have an
Yeah,
alien question.
that's right. That's right.
So tell me
That's
tell me a
awesome.
little bit about. Well, first answer that if you have any response to that, and then tell me about what about aliens and why did you want to talk about them today?
Well, first, my response to that is I actually think that's such a good system because I started to do part of that, which is taking a look at the full week and mentally prepping myself for what I have. I think the next step is probably to make sure that you have enough white space in your calendar. Um, but I will definitely take that. I'm going to steal that from you.
Yeah, please. I mean, it's been such a game changer for me because I have the energy to tackle the things that I need to, and it's
Yeah,
allowed me to become very clear on my return on energy. What are
yeah,
those things that, especially when you start a business, you're joining all these lessons and webinars and sessions, and next thing you know, you're just sitting learning all day, but you're not actually implementing anything. So
right.
how do you make sure that's like, okay, 20% of my time is for learning. I don't need to
Yeah,
do all of the lessons this week or today even. And because otherwise you just make yourself busy for the sake of busy, which also will give you dopamine and make you feel good, but it won't move the needle and you won't be able to do that forever.
yeah, absolutely. I feel like with the information that we have with the internet and podcasts and books, I mean, you can listen to 3 audiobooks a day if you wanted to. And
Yeah.
I used to constantly listen to podcasts while I was working, doing my computer work. And I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, I can only soak up so much information before it literally stresses you out, like
Right.
taking that much information in. So I've tried to switch to music or switch to something else and maybe allow 1 or 2 podcasts a week
It's good.
to
Yeah, we need time to
really
digest. We need time
yeah,
to digest all that information and like formulate in our own brain. We need time to think. We don't have time. If we don't have white space in our calendars, we don't have time to think. If you're always listening to a podcast on the walk or like just consuming, it's very difficult to take all of that information and start to make connections and understand how it relates
yeah,
to your life, to your situation. And
yeah,
Albert Einstein, one of my favorite quotes of his is, "If I had an hour to solve a problem, I would spend 55 minutes thinking about it."
interesting. I've actually never heard that one.
Yeah.
That's
It's a good one
awesome.
because,
Yeah,
it's very true to, we just go straight to problem solving mode. Well, what about this? What about this? What about this? Instead of just thinking through really all the different parameters and then structuring something.
yeah. I think slowing everything down is definitely my goal for myself, finishing out this year and starting next year. Because if you don't have that time to think and listen to yourself,
Mm,
I mean, you're always going to run into a wall. It's just a matter of time.
yeah, absolutely.
As far as aliens go, I wanted to talk to you because you've been so into, not only aviation but aerospace too, and that's been something I've been like interested in since I was a little kid watching Star Wars and Star Trek, and
Love it.
now as an adult with things actually coming out of pilots, people in our industry. Seeing things they can't explain, and the government finally being like, "All right, we're aware of this. We can talk about this a little bit with you guys." I think it's so exciting because I've always thought that it's kind of selfish of us to think that we're the only ones.
It's really
It's
selfish.
just
It's extremely narcissistic.
yeah, yeah, and I like Earth. I think we're probably the best, but um, I also think that the universe is a bit too big for us to be the only ones here. So
Right. I mean, and
I'm
also people, just because we can't understand them fully, like in their language, and they don't have the same tool use that we have, that, why would we even consider to think that there's not something else out there? You know what? I saw a meme the other day, and it was like, how there's bad neighborhoods that you avoid and you don't drive through,
yeah,
well, or countries you don't overfly because there's, a war zone. And the
Yeah,
meme was basically saying that aliens probably bypass Earth because they're like, ugh, we don't want to go there. So,
probably.
they're
Probably,
like,
especially
we're
right
way
now.
too immature down there. They can't even understand their own emotions and they just act like children and throw their toys all the time and fight with each other. Let's wait
Yeah.
until they grow up. That's
Yeah.
probably what they're
Ex-
saying. That's what I would say if I was an evolved being.
exactly. They're probably hovering over us like they're not ready yet. They're not ready.
Or they're
I'm
just like,
a
oh, that's so cute. Some of them kind of get it and oh, look at them right here, okay, yeah, maybe that's cute,
yes.
but no, we just don't want to land there yet. We'll come another time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and think
I'm
about
like
like if we think
super
about aliens and how we process time, like humans, we have a lifespan of let's just say average of 80 years, right? A dog has a lifespan of, depending on the breed, anywhere from 10 to 20 years,
yeah.
right? Horses,
I
20 to
hope
30
20.
years. Butterflies, like weeks, you know?
Yeah.
The way that they process time is very different to how we process time. So what's not to say that there's another like elves, let's talk about Lord of the Rings for a second. If elves literally live for millennia, they're not in a rush to do things and they don't really care about your dumb little timetable. They'll like let you do your
Yeah.
silly war humans because it's not going to affect us in the long run. Until you start affecting our things, we're just going to let you do your thing. So that the way that these aliens process time, the way they communicate, animals see different wavelengths than we do. They hear different frequencies. It's probably the same thing. They could be on Earth and we just don't have the technology to see them yet or to
We have no idea.
interact with them.
Yeah. I've been super intrigued by the theory that aliens are actually from the ocean
Mm,
recent, because the ocean is like so fascinating to me. Although like I'm definitely in the airplane space, the ocean's so fascinating to me, but it's so terrifying because we have no idea what's down there, and
right.
whether they're coming down, they're going to our ocean, they're coming back up, maybe because there's something that's more worthwhile than interacting with us down there.
So
And
yeah,
then
it's so
going
fascinating. And
back
like who
up.
knows? Down there, there's so many creatures that like live under immense pressure, right? And it's dark and
Yeah,
they just have different abilities than we do because we're up here on the surface.
yeah,
And one of my favorite books that I read recently is called Project Hail Mary. That's by Andy Weir. So he's the author of The Martian as well. And he's one of the authors that's like the most scientifically accurate in terms of the way that he brings the science into the fiction and merges
yeah,
everything with the story.
yeah,
And it really like I found myself laughing a lot, like laughing out loud just because it like you're chuckling. And then other times you're like just really contemplating, like, whoa, I didn't consider that. And that's wild, right?
yeah,
And so it's very definitely one of my recommended books if people are interested in this space. But I agree with you. There's too many accounts of people who fly airplanes or who have, been in experiences that they can't explain. I mean, we've had that for many,
yeah,
many years. And we might be on the cusp of contact. Who knows? I know that they
well,
now have in the government, like a dedicated UAP person uh,
yeah,
in all departments, and they have
yeah,
meetings. I am sure there's classified things, there's a lot. I think about aviation as an example. We have to get the public used to the idea that we only need one or maybe no people in the cockpit,
yeah.
right? Like with Waymo, I'm here in San Francisco right now. I've been driving around in the Waymos instead of Ubers. And I'm like, this is great. I don't have to talk to
Wait,
anybody.
are there
Waymo is
no
a
people
driverless
in there?
vehicle. Yeah,
Oh
driverless
my
vehicle.
gosh, it's crazy.
It's wild. It's a wild experience, but
That's
after 30
kind of cool.
seconds, you're like, it's totally normal. You get over
Oh
it.
my gosh,
And
that's
now I'm like,
wild.
I kind of prefer the Waymo than another
Yeah,
person because the person's looking at their phone, they don't have the mount and this, and they don't know the
yeah.
direction. This thing's plugged into the GPS. Like, I don't know. It
I
felt great
am.
for me. Some people might still need some time to accept it, but it was a
Yeah,
very easy transition for me. So I think about, like in 10 years in the future, there will be a time where like maybe your children, maybe my children, maybe our grandchildren, they'd get in a car and they'd be like, whoa, whoa, see, grandma, why are you driving? Like, do
are
you know
you
how to
driving?
drive this thing? Do you know what you're doing? Right. And
Yeah,
you'll actually be the danger because if everything else is on the system that's
yeah,
seamlessly communicating with itself, Obviously, there's a whole host of other problems we might have to worry about, but we don't have the human element in it. But there used to be 3 pilots in the cockpit and a navigator and a flying engineer. Now we have 2, and it's totally normal. There's no flying navigator, right? So we're getting closer and closer to the public accepting and feeling okay with this scenario. And that's going to be, possibly what happens of like, okay, now we feel like you won't have a mass panic and freak out. And so now here, we actually know these people that are not people. So
I feel like there's so much that, especially with like social media and just all the information that the public has now, that there's a few different topics that I have always been so like interested in and passionate about that are now being more and more accepted. Like when you used to think that aliens were just a conspiracy theory, now the government's talking about it. It's like kind of wild for some people, but for people that were always interested in it, we're like, we knew it.
Yes, I know, right?
Yeah.
And it's this just this excitement around it also. A lot of things that used to be science fiction are science fact now.
Yeah. And the same thing with the innovation in aviation in particular. My dad and I debate about this all the time, and we both feel the same way. There's a lot of people that are so passionate about aviation like we are that want it to remain the same. And, I was having this conversation. There's a really awesome company up and coming called Skyrise. And people that know me are probably sick of me talking about them, but I'm so passionate about what they're doing. And I think that the technology they're bringing it's going to be so important for general aviation because it is making it so much safer. And there's AI involved, and they're basically making a platform that was not fly-by-wire now, and it's way more autonomous when you want it to be, but it takes a lot of the load off of the pilot so that you can make better decision making and act as the pilot. So it's just a really awesome technology. And what I will say is, there's a lot of people that are going to be adverse to adopting that innovation, but in my opinion, it's only a matter of time. So you might as well accept it now and be excited about it and kind of get on board rather than, being forced into the innovation. I just think innovation that's well implemented is so exciting. And, a lot of people are adverse to it, but especially in this industry. But I'm very excited about all of the new technology that's coming out and the future of aviation because it's going to make it safer, it's going to make it more accessible, and it's going to make it better for everybody. So very excited about innovation in all regards and aliens.
Awesome. Yeah, no, this is definitely something that I love to geek out on and right? We don't know the exact origin. We have our theories and our ideas, but who knows, so that's a great mystery, but I'm excited to see what happens. There's a lot of things like in Star Trek that used to be not real and now they're real. And so it's exciting. It's an exciting time, especially, we just saw SpaceX with their 5th test launch, right? Of Starship, and just like the
coolest
buzz
thing.
Community.
Yeah. That was the coolest thing.
And it was amazing. And like, that's going to be a day, October 13th, 2024. It's going to be a day that people will talk about in the future. It's going to be in history books. It's like one of the milestones,
We really are witnessing history in the making. And I don't think we've experienced that kind of innovation in aviation in such a long time. So it's really cool. And it's really cool to be a little bit more open with, what's probably a little bit classified as far as the aliens and other life. It all goes in together.
Elon is an alien. Who knows? Maybe that's why he's so dedicated to getting off the planet.
That's a good theory. He might be.
Oh my goodness. All right, Sierra, I know we could talk for hours and just have so much more fun, but I want to go to our questions. So I always like to ask people what their superpower is. What would you say one of your superpowers is?
I think my superpower is honestly my stubbornness. People close to me will, yes. The tenacity is it's a nice way of saying it. People
All about the
closest to me
reframe.
will tell you.
It's all about the reframe. Trust me.
That's
I'm
right.
the same. So I understand this
That's right.
superpower.
No, I think, when you have a certain amount of hard-headedness and stubbornness, it's easier to pivot because you're just so focused on the end goal, and your route of getting there, you know, almost doesn't matter.
Hmm.
So, or as much, as long as the, end goal is the same. So I think that would probably be my biggest superpower, that and a little bit of optimism, I would say.
Awesome.
I'm a little more optimistic than most. I kind of just close my eyes and put in the work, and something inside of me tells it's going to work out.
Yeah, no, those are great superpowers, and it can also sometimes be a bit of a limiting factor. Very often your
Totally.
superpower is tied to your weakness because there's like the shadow side of that superpower, right? So always understanding how something serves you and how it limits you is really, really powerful. But I like that because yes, when you have that hard-headedness, you'll learn how to find the path. You'll create the path if you need to. What
Totally.
where the balance comes in is learning how to not get too rigid in the stubbornness, right? And allowing it to flow.
Absolutely.
So being like water, going around the obstacle and meeting back up after, right? Rather than like, I must go through the rock and like let me drill through it. That's really tough.
Yeah.
Like, oh, let's go this way. And we'll get to the other side also.
Yes, that's definitely a skill I've had to develop over time, is how to use this to my benefit rather than my detriment. So
Mhm.
absolutely. 100%.
I love it. All right. Now, who are those people that in your life you would call your personal board of directors? Now, these can be real life people, fictional
Yeah.
characters from the past, an avatar. Are there these like lenses you look at life in which to help you make decisions?
Yeah. I really do have a personal board of directors, I feel. My Definitely a great question. My parents, obviously, I'm an only child, so I'm super close with them, and they have definitely turned into mentors as well, just because, you know, my dad is in the aviation space and he's just a wealth of knowledge. And so when it
Mm,
comes to aviation and business and making sure I'm on the right path, I always kind of go to him and go to my mom for any sort of encouragement, because she's like the one that is always believing me no matter what. So, and then honestly, my partner, we have such different lenses that we look through life in, and it's very cool. He's in the military. He's a pilot as well. And the military mindset and the entrepreneurship mindset are so different, and it's very cool
yes.
to be
Mhm.
able it's very cool to be able to run things by him, and know that he has my best interest in mind, but know he can also probably see ways of doing things or ways around things that I might not, just because, he's so structured. And I feel I bring a little bit of spontaneity and life
Mm,
into into things.
yeah.
Um, so I think those three would probably be my board of directors.
Awesome. I love that. And it's important to have that other side of you, right? Like if we just surround ourselves by people who are the same thought, that's where we start to get groupthink. And like we convince ourselves that it's the best idea, but we're not really taking in all the consideration. And, I'm very similar, a little more spontaneous, a little bit more like, let's just go for it. And having those
Yeah.
people around that can temper and say, well, let's
Yeah.
look at these other things. Let's create a plan also around it. Then that's what great businesses are built from, those different perspectives.
Yeah, definitely someone to keep you grounded is so necessary, and especially with the work that we do. I mean, it's so fast paced, it's changing every day, and an outside perspective of someone that's a little bit more grounded is very necessary. I don't think I'd be where I am today if I did not
Absolutely.
have that.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad that you have that around you, and I'm glad that you utilize it, because sometimes we have those people around us, but we don't really ask, right? We're afraid of like not knowing the answer. And that's the whole point of asking. But I used to get
Yeah.
stuck in that. I used to think like I should know the answer. I should know everything. And that's just silly. So that's
Absolutely.
really cool. So now with the aliens that are listening to our conversation, I would wonder what you would think that they would get their impression of humanity because they meet you, Sierra, as the first human and they interact with you. What do you think that they would learn?
Oh my gosh, that's a stressful thought. It's a lot of weight. I would hope that they would learn that humanity and people here are goal oriented and striving for something that's bigger than themselves. Um, and yeah, I think I would leave it at that. I think that uh, hopefully I would come through as, very passionate and, but at the same time, compassionate.
Hmm.
It's something I'm really trying to come across as. So hopefully they would see that in me and know that, these larger goals aren't just about personal gain and personal satisfaction, but it really is about bringing the people around me with me. And hopefully that would shine through because a lot of times when you're, so goal oriented, it seems a little bit selfish, but uh, hopefully, with all of the work that I do, I can show that it's not about me at all. It's really about the people around me in the community and whoever we can help and bring up along the way.
Beautiful. Amazing. Well, I'm sure that they would agree with that. And when they decide to reach out to us, we can we can ask for their
Call us up.
confirmation. Yeah. Just
That's right.
call me. You know what? You know how to find us on LinkedIn. Maybe you don't, but
Yeah.
just find Sarah Calmetter, Sierra Lund. When you
Yeah.
use Google, someone can teach you, or hopefully you can just plug into it, or just contact us in our mind and our dreams, and we'll
Yeah.
we'll
They'll
respond.
they'll telepathic communication is the best form.
Exactly. Just tell us, just give us the secrets, and we'll communicate that way, and we'll keep your secret safe.
That's right.
All right, Sierra, amazing. This has been so much fun. I'm really glad we got to have you on the show and catch you at this pivot point of your own business and the growth and the newness that you have. So I wish you luck with that. Keep having fun, keep nourishing yourself, and we'll see you very soon.
Thank you for having me. So good talking to you.
So good to see you too. And for everyone else joining, we'll have another episode with you next week in the lounge.